Wind here. So in today's video we're going to talk about mastering ServiceNow navigation within the application navigator. So essentially using some advanced techniques, essentially commands in navigation filter to navigate directly to list forms or configuration views essentially of a table. And these will just allow you to be a little bit more swifter within the ServiceNow platform. There are many videos essentially about this functionality. However, I do want to provide a few useful tips on some of the entities we could use them on some of the different commands, and additionally when to use it. So commands work only for the tables you are permitted to access. So I do want to call that out. If you are an end user that you're looking to kind of leverage this, or kind of an ITIL user, so you have access to the backend, as you would need access to the backend to essentially use these in the application navigator, you will be permitted to only access the tables that you have roles for. So if you're looking to access the log table as an example as an ITIL user, you would not have access to that. But I'm hoping most of you that are watching this are system administrators or have the admin role essentially, so you would essentially face no issues here in terms of the kind of core tables. So the other most important note is that the table name must match the name in the dictionary entry for the table. So when using, for example, incident.list is the table name. Do not use the kind of label of the table, and I can show kind of where we can find that within the ServiceNow platform. You can also enter any of the commands above in uppercase. So to open the list or form in a new window, for example, you just essentially need to change the command to capitals. Now, it doesn't matter if you enter the table name in capitals or not, as long as the command is as an uppercase, it will open a new window. If it's a lowercase, it will essentially just open within the existing window or tab. Okay, so let's go through essentially each one, and then right at the end I'll kind of show how we can find table names for tables essentially, given you have the admin access, of course. So let's talk about the first command, so table name dot list. So this just opens the list view of the table on the same window or tab. So let's just see how this works. So I'm just going to go back to the home page here, and essentially if I type in let's do it in all caps. So you can see here it's all uppercase, and essentially it's just open the instant list in a new tab. As you can see, it did not matter if the table name is capital as well. It will essentially just do the same thing as long as the prompt, as long as the command is in capitals. So let's now just open it in lowercase just to show the difference. So essentially, as you can see here, it's just open this in the same window or tab, essentially same functionality. Okay, so the next prompt is the .form or .do. So this one essentially opens the form view of the table in the same window or tab. So essentially, if I want to just create a new record, rather than just clicking new, go to the table, clicking new, I would essentially just type in incident.form. And you can see here, it's open a new record, and then go and fill it in and submit it. So just a very quick way to get to kind of a new record if you're looking to enter some data. .do essentially does the same thing. So if I just do incident.do, it'll essentially create a new record here as well. So that's when you use table names. There is another feature you could use .do on. However, I would kind of call out precaution on this one, because essentially most likely you do not want to do this in production unless there's a real big issue that you're looking to try and resolve, and the cache on the platform is kind of one of the causes, so you might look to flush that. So essentially what you could do is flush the cache application wide, which mean it would affect essentially all users using the ServiceNow application. Essentially what flushing the cache means is just removing that temporary data that's stored by the ServiceNow application to ensure that the system uses the most up-to-date information, but also allows to kind of load those queries faster by kind of saving some of the kind of tasks or transactions you've already done in a cache. So essentially if I go over here and just type in cache.do, you're going to see it essentially flush the cache. So we can see the kind of the memory data here, and then after cache flush we can see the memory data has changed, the servlet memory. So you can see here some of the values essentially for the 3% has decreased. So just kind of providing that functionality. Now I do once again reiterate, most likely do not look to use this in production unless very crucial. But if your test instance or dev instance is running slow and you feel like it might be because of the cache, you could essentially do this on the application navigator to essentially flush the cache very quickly. Okay, so that's the .do and .form. The next one is .config. So this essentially just opens the configuration view of the table. So again, if I just use instance.config, okay, we can see essentially all the configurations for instance. So the business rules, the client scripts, the dictionary entries, essentially the columns under the instant table. So yeah, just a very quick way to essentially get to this configuration part of the table. And then the last one is .filter. Now I don't think this one is usually kind of highlighted, and I think it's a really nice one, and I use it all the time, especially when you have very big data in ServiceNow tables. So essentially what this does is it opens an empty list view of the table, so essentially no records, and then from that window you can essentially apply filters to essentially load the list that you require. And that's great, especially when you're handling the CMDB table, for example. In organizations, you have millions and millions of CIs, and sometimes just loading that page to just get to the query you want to actually get to, just kind of eats up your time. So let's just show how this will work. So first of all, I'm just gonna kind of open up CMDB underscore CI just to show the records, but also the time taken. As you see here, it's taken a little bit longer than incident. Okay, and those 2,000 records, so it should probably be faster, probably my network. But just example, if we had millions here, it would essentially take a little bit longer. So if I now just did cmdb.ci.filter, you can see it opens a kind of blank canvas here, and I can just drop down to my filters here and just kind of write assign to is not empty as an example, and I get a more filtered list from that 2,000. So it just helps me to essentially save some time if I'm looking to do very queried filter before I even get there. Okay, so that's essentially all of the out-the-box commands that are available. So let's talk about, okay, we want to know what the table names are and how do we essentially find that. So there's a few ways. Of course, if you go to the table itself through one of the kind of module or menu links here, from here essentially you could kind of go configure, go to table, okay, and essentially you can see the name of the incident. So I do want to call out when we go to configure table, when we go to .config, it doesn't provide these fields here, so it's not something you can find the table name of, but if you went to .config, you probably already know the table name. The other way is just kind of looking at the URL. So essentially, if I went to instance, on the top, you can kind of see the name of the table just before that .do. So that's also a kind of good way to do it if you're on this. Now, what if you don't actually have a module menu link and you just need to find a table that is visibly hidden from here? Well, there is another menu feature you can use here, which I remember the name. So tables and columns. So if I go to tables and columns, essentially this brings up essentially all the tables in ServiceNow, and as you can see here, the table name is within these brackets. So for example, if I just scroll down and if I just try to find, yep, so if you just kind of select something, and if you kind of know what the kind of table label is or starts with, you essentially just click on the any record and just type in a letter. So let's say I just type in H, it would take me to the kind of start of H. So just a fancy tip there. So essentially, if I kind of wanted to know the hardware table, I can see that there's an ALM hardware table, there's a BCI hardware table, hardware catalog. So essentially, this is where I can find the table name, and essentially you can just copy this from here if you don't want to type it out. And if I just do .list, as you can see, it's taken me to the hardware catalog table. So that's essentially it for this video. Very short and very few quick tips around the commands. I hope it helped. Please let me know if you have any questions on these, and thank you. Have a good day. Bye.